You really think they see you as anything more than a waitress with a bleeding conscience? That's what he told her right before raising a glass to the crowd, thinking she was nothing. No one not worth the cost of watching. But Rhea had already moved. One glance, one whisper, and the glass never touched his lips. What came next, it wasn't just survival. It was something deeper, sharper, older than vengeance. It was a woman deciding she'd had enough of running. Before we dive in, let me know, what time are you listening to this and where are you? Drop a comment below, we'd love to hear from you. The late light slanted through Rosario's front windows, washing the worn tiles in a faint amber glow. Silverware clinked in rhythm like a thought tapped out without end. Rhea wiped table 6 again, though no one had sat there since lunch. Bleach lingered on the cloth. Her knuckles were raw from rinse water. A customer waved as he grabbed his takeout. "Thanks, Rachel." She smiled faintly, let the name pass. Names didn't matter much here. The bell chimed. Another gust October sharp, with wet leaves and smoke. Rhea barely glanced up, adjusting the salt and pepper shakers. Behind the counter, Elena stirred a pot flour dusted on her apron. A small nod passed between them, ritual unspoken. At table 2, an older man set down his menu. "Didn't you used to teach?" "You've got that kind of voice." Rhea tilted her head. "No, sir, just here." He smiled unconvinced, but said no more. Later in the cooler, she drew out the thin chain under her collar. The locket swung dull in the light, its engraving worn smooth. She pressed it between her palms, breathed once, twice, 3 times. When she stepped back onto the floor, her gaze swept the room. It caught on booth 7. 3 men, not regulars. One watching the door, another tapping an erratic beat with his fingers. Their booth was too dark, their posture too alert. Elena's voice called from the kitchen. "Table 10 wants the reserve red." Rhea fetched the bottle. The label felt brittle cork, taut. As she moved toward table 10, booth 7's murmur slipped into reach. "When he lifts the glass, that's when we move." She didn't falter, just kept walking. Table 10 waited suits, pressed napkins. The man at the center had just arrived. Rain still beaded his dark coat hair slicked back. Silas Moreau. He never made trouble, never lingered. But tonight his gaze swept the room once sharp and fast. Rhea uncorked the bottle with a soft pop, let it breathe, then poured. His fingers traced the napkin edge like they were restless for a different grip. He murmured, "Salute," and reached for the stem. Rhea leaned in, her voice barely a thread. "Don't talk." Silas's eyes flicked toward her, not startled, just recalculating. The glass froze halfway to his lips. At booth 7, the tapping ceased. She straightened and moved on. Hands stayed steady until she reached the bar, where the tremor finally surfaced, crawling up her arms like static. Her phone buzzed. A new message. No name attached. "You think that was smart?" The hallway reeked faintly of boiled cabbage and polish, the kind of scent that clung to old Brooklyn walk-ups. Rhea climbed the last flight with a grocery bag hooked at her elbow, keys clenched tight in the other hand. The stairwell groaned under each step. She paused at her door. Nothing looked off. Yet the stillness beyond the frame prickled. The lock turned with a reluctant click. No light greeted her, only the familiar chill of a room that never quite felt lived in. Barely wide enough for a bed, a chair, and the pretending to be a kitchenette. A suitcase still waited under the window, half unpacked, though she'd been here months. Her gaze caught on the curtain. It shifted slightly. The window was cracked open. It hadn't been that morning. No broken latch, no forced entry. Still, her chest tightened. The phone buzzed again in her palm. Another message sharper than the draft spilling through that gap. "We know where you live. Stay out of it." She set the phone on the chipped counter and reached for the rotary Elena had insisted she keep for real emergencies. The dial tone hummed against her ear. She lowered the receiver without pressing a number. Who would believe her? Who would she even name? She sat on the mattress, knees drawn close. Streetlight flicker painted restless shadows across the wall. Her fists clenched without her noticing. Time blurred. Then came the knock. 3 raps. Precise. Deliberate. Her lungs locked. Bare feet carried her toward the door soundlessly. No voice. No shadow at the threshold. Only a floorboard groaning, then fading away. She stood there until the silence thickened. Eventually, exhaustion dragged her down. She slept sitting upright against the wall, one shoe still on. By morning, the sky had traded its heavy gray for a brittle blue. On the walk to Rosario's, every alley and doorway seemed sharper than usual, her scarf wound tight against her throat. The cafe was just opening. Elena hummed as she lifted chairs down. Rhea said nothing, took a rag, sprayed the glass, and worked at the streaks. 10 minutes later, the bell chimed. Silas Moreau stepped through like the place belonged to him. Coat immaculate, shoes dry, despite the puddles outside. A to-go cup balanced in one hand. "Elena," he said, and gave her a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Elena, flustered in the way she only got around men with tailored coats, waved a flour-dusted hand. "He comes once a week now," she whispered to Rhea. "Always orders the lemon cake." Rhea didn't smile. Silas's gaze found her, calm like still water covering something alive beneath. "Mind if we talk?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod. Together they slipped out through the back. The alley behind Rosario's was always cloaked in shadow, even at noon. Paint peeled from the brick, and then a broken umbrella slumped against a dumpster like a dead bird. He didn't circle around the point. "I need to know why you did it." Her arms folded tight. "I heard what they said. I couldn't just stand there." His brow lifted. "You stepped between me and whatever they were planning. That's not nothing. I didn't think. I just reacted. You were shaking, but you still warned me. I don't sit quiet when someone's about to get hurt." His gaze fixed on her, steady, unnerving. Not gentle, not condemning, just exact. From his coat pocket, he drew a card, held it out. "If anything else happens, you call me. I don't usually call strangers. You're not the only one being watched." She slipped the card into her pocket without looking at it. No goodbye passed between them. That night at her apartment, she shoved the bolt harder than usual. The window gaped open again, just enough. As she reached to close it, her hand brushed something left on the sill. A wilted flower bent at the stem. Someone had been there. Again. The laundromat carried the sting of bleach and softener sweetness, clinging in the throat. Overhead, fluorescent tubes hummed. Machines turned slow, and relentless glass doors flashing broken halos across the floor. Rhea had always come here to breathe, to fold quiet into order. Tonight the room felt tilted, as though someone had shifted it just enough to make her stumble. She shoved her Rosario's uniform into the third washer, from the left, the one that only worked if you kicked the hinge. Coins clinked, water surged, the drum caught rhythm. Collar, sleeve, apron, string sleeve again. Endless circles. She tried to let the rotation drown her thoughts, but her eyes slid toward the corner. A man sat facing the door. Hood pulled low, coffee balanced on his knee, gaze fixed just past her shoulder. He'd been here before. Last Saturday, 2 machines down. The week before, a newspaper held upside down. She turned away, folding towels with sharper creases than necessary. "You work at Rosario's, don't you?" The voice brushed her ear. The towel slipped from her grip. When she turned, he was closer, hood down. His face was ordinary, built to disappear. He gave a faint smile, the kind you might offer a half-familiar stranger at a bus stop. "Sorry," she asked. "Rosario's," he repeated slower. "On Van Brunt." "You work there." She shook her head. "You've got the wrong person." "I don't." His hand slipped into his coat. Her stomach tightened, fists curling without thought. But he pulled out only a photograph, edges worn soft. "I know who they are," he said evenly. "And I know you know." She didn't need more than a glance. Table 7. 3 men. One scarred ear to jaw. One checking his watch. One mid-drum about to rise. "I don't know anything," she blurted, stepping back. "You heard them. You warned him." His tone stayed casual, but the words cut. "That makes you part of it." Her head shook in denial, though the motion felt detached. She left the towels, the uniform, everything spinning. The door slammed behind her. Rain misted her hair, streaked her cheeks. Left then, right then, across the street, cutting through puddles and shadows. By the time Carroll Park opened ahead, her lungs burned like she'd been sprinting, though she hadn't. The restroom door gave beneath her hand. She locked a stall, slid to the cold tile arms, locked around her chest. Twice her phone slipped before she managed to dial Silas. It rang once. Twice. Then his voice steady. "Where are you?" Her mouth opened. Nothing came. "I'm sending someone," he said after a pause. "Stay put." The line cut. She stayed crouched until her knees screamed. No one entered. When she finally stepped out, a figure leaned on a lamppost across the street, cigarette ember faint in the dark. When her gaze caught him, he flicked ash and drifted away. Back in her apartment, breath rasped shallow. Silas hadn't asked, hadn't pressed. He offered protection, but on his terms. That weight pressed hard. She paced between sink and mattress, bare feet whispering against the floor. Sleep never came. At dawn, she returned for her laundry. The laundromat was empty, machines, silent lights buzzing overhead. Her load had been shifted into a cart. She reached for her apron, still warm, then her shirt. Her hand froze. The fabric had been cut clean down the chest, slicing through the embroidered restaurant name. Not torn cut, deliberate. Pinned to it was the corner of that photograph. The three men, grainy table 7. And at the edge, blurred but unmistakable, her reflection in the restaurant mirror tray, in hand, had tilted toward them. She stood there, shirt in one hand, photo scrap in the other, machines silent except for the drip of water from above. Grills spat beneath the waning sun, smoke curling with charred meat. Rosario's had gone all out, 2 canopies stretched over long tables, stacked with trays, plastic cutlery, rattling in cups. Strings of lights glowing like fireflies caught in air. The riverside park buzzed with chatter. Children raced through puddles left from morning rain. A Bluetooth speaker pulsed out a cumbia beat bass, vibrating through Rhea's sneakers. She stayed near the food line, helping Elena ladle pozole and heap rice onto plates. Sauce streaked her apron hair, pulled tight and high. Events like this steadied her. No walls, no booths to bus, just faces, voices, food moving hand to hand. Enough noise to dull the hollow ache still lodged in her since the laundromat. Elena passed her the ladle. "Second round's coming," she said, swiping her brow with her wrist. "Watch the green salsa. People fight for it." Rhea smiled, turned for paper bowls. Rhea. The name froze her. A man stood across the folding table, hands deep in the pockets of a navy jacket. Polished, at ease. The kind of presence built for magazine covers or donor galas. She didn't know the face, but the voice, the smile tucked beneath it. It shattered her like glass hit by a stone. "I thought you disappeared." His tone was soft, almost fond. "Turns out you were just hiding." Her grip on the ladle whitened. "What do you want, Funny? I was going to ask you the same." He leaned in, slightly scanning her as if for fractures. "You always did have a savior complex. Think you stopped something the other night. You only slowed it down." Her mouth moved, but nothing came. Then he spoke her real name, the one no one at Rosario's knew. Not Elena, not Silas, no one in Brooklyn. Rhea stayed silent. Vincent smiled, memory flickering behind it. "That's what I thought." A knuckle tapped once on the table, then he vanished into the crowd. The world snapped back, music, chatter, foil, rustling in the wind, a child's cry near the drink table. Rhea's hand trembled. She didn't notice Elena beside her until a palm pressed steady against her back. No words, just weight enough to keep her upright. The night went on. She handed out tacos, returned smiles when asked, but her ears rang every time someone called a name across the park. Her gaze kept combing the crowd, searching sunglasses and hoodies for a face that didn't belong. By the time she reached her apartment, the sky was navy slick with stars. Her door hung ajar. She froze. Wood splintered near the lock, subtle as if someone had tugged too hard. Breath stalled. She stepped across the threshold. The lights worked. Nothing smelled amiss. Yet the stillness carried weight, as though someone had lingered long enough to disturb the room and leave it unsettled. Drawers gaped open. Books lay scattered. The dresser stood gutted. Her laptop was gone. So was the velvet pouch once hidden in her sock drawer. The chain inside, silver, delicate, her mother's name etched in a language she no longer spoke, gone too. Her knees gave way. A shard from the mug on her nightstand sliced her palm as she caught herself. She didn't flinch. Blood streaked the floor. Her eyes stayed on the wreckage but didn't absorb it. She sat hollow as if the ground had taken the last of her strength. In the hall, the motion sensor clicked. Overhead light hummed, flickered. Bright. Dark. Bright. No footsteps. No knock. No one came. The bell above the door gave a low chime, more breath than sound. Rhea slipped in slowly. The shop smelled of forgotten things, cracked leather paper steeped in years, a faint trace of cedar polish clinging to shelves. Dust drifted through a beam of light from a high window. Somewhere deeper, a radio whispered old jazz saxophone, worn and fading memory, pressed into vinyl. Silas didn't greet her at once. He moved ahead, weaving through the aisles like someone walking a memory. "You own this?" Rhea asked, voice dropping, without meaning to. A short nod. "Not officially. It's in someone else's name. But yes, it's mine." She blinked. The store didn't match him at all. No sharp edges, no polished arrogance. Just dim bulbs, wood creaking underfoot shelves, bowed with the weight of too many words. At the counter, he let his fingers rest on a worn spine, reverent. "My mother worked here. Thursdays were her day. Story time with the kids. She'd sit right there." He motioned to a threadbare armchair, even when her lungs made it hard to breathe. Rhea stepped closer. "You never mentioned her." "She died before I became the version you met." The radio seemed to hesitate between tracks, as if giving space for the words. Rhea lowered herself onto a bench under the window. The cushion had long collapsed wood pressing into her hips. It still felt solid. Real. "Why bring me here?" she asked. "Because it's the only place that still smells like something honest." His gaze met hers, steady, not prying. "You're not just a waitress. That much is clear." She hesitated, then spoke. "I was a federal witness against a company laundering money through offshore accounts and fake energy projects. Harrow was one of their stars." Her eyes strayed to a faded copy of Leaves of Grass, easier than facing him. "They offered me a way out." Paid silence. "I almost took it. Then I burned the check. Showed up in court anyway." Silas exhaled slowly. "And they turned on you. They didn't just want me quiet. They wanted the story erased. Me erased with it." The words trembled as they left, like naming an old ghost aloud. He stepped closer, his shadow brushing the bench. "They won't stop now. You know that." "I know. You could disappear again. Another name. Another zip code. You're good at vanishing. No accusation, just fact laid flat between them." "I'm tired," she said. "Not only of hiding, of being prey." He didn't nod or smile. Instead, he set a small black case on the bench. A burner phone and a key card rested within plain objects, yet heavy with intent. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "But you can stop running. Come with me, push back. You know who they are. You know how they work." Her thumb traced the card's edge. She didn't answer, didn't promise, but she didn't leave either. Silas let the silence stand. They lingered near the shelves, distance narrowing, not crossed. Something in the air shifted, less guarded, more tethered. Outside, rain dusted the sidewalk. The bakery's neon bled through the window, casting their silhouettes against the books behind them. Two shapes close, unmoving. One turned slightly, just enough to blur the space between. The stairwell curled upward like a spine, each concrete step hollowed smooth by years. Rhea followed Silas through a rusted door that groaned open. Beyond it stretched a rooftop garden suspended above the city. Planters spilled rosemary, lavender, ivy, their scents caught by the night breeze. Lanterns swayed from wires overhead, painting leaves in soft yellow. He led her along a narrow path to a bench tucked beneath a trellis. Roses clung wild to its frame, petals curling at summer's end. On the iron table between them, Silas placed a slim black recorder. Its red light blinked once, steady and patient. "My guy intercepted this last night," Silas said, voice low. "Vincent's office line. Thought you should hear it yourself." He pressed play. Static hissed, followed by the faint clink of glass. Then a voice, Vincent Harrow's, sharp and unmistakable, slashed through the noise. "We should have ended it at Rosario's. Letting her walk was a mistake." Rhea's breath hitched. Her back stiffened against the bench. Another voice responded, muffled, clipped, before the tape cut out too soon to catch a name. Silas studied her expression. Recognized the second voice. She shook her head, then reached for the recorder. "I need to hear it again." He didn't stop her. She connected her phone to a small adapter, fingers, quick and steady. Adjusting pitch, trimming noise, looping fragments, each tweak pulled the sound into sharper focus. The city below murmured in the background, sirens, a horn-faint music leaking from an open window somewhere across the blocks. Minutes later, a hidden layer surfaced. This time, the second voice came through clear, deliberate edge with a Midwestern cadence. "Tell Vincent we're done waiting." Rhea froze. Her thumb lingered above the pause button. That's not someone taking orders. That's someone giving them. Silas narrowed his gaze. "We've been staring at Vincent too long. Maybe he's not the top." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the soft rustle of ivy against the trellis. The moon slipped behind a veil of cloud lanterns, flickering patterns across the stone like maps drawn in light. Rhea's voice came low, fragile. "Have you ever trusted someone and then had them tear everything apart?" Silas turned. "I trusted my mother's doctor. She wasn't even sick, not really. But they convinced her she was. Ran trials through her insurance. By the time I understood, she didn't even know my face anymore." Her eyes dropped to her hands. "And you couldn't stop it." "I tried. I was 17. I screamed through that hospital until security dragged me out. The bills still came for years." Rhea inhaled shaky. "That's what it feels like. Watching it happen and not being able to move." "You moved, Rhea. You warned me." She didn't answer. Her shoulder brushed his, then leaned in tentative. The contact wasn't forced, wasn't fragile. It just settled there, as if it belonged. Silas stayed still, arm resting along the back of the bench, offering presence without pressure. For a moment, nothing shifted further. The wind carried rosemary across the rooftop. Bridge lights shimmered on the river. Somewhere distant, a train rattled over its tracks. "Why here?" she whispered. His breath left slow through his nose. "My mother worked in a bookstore her whole life. Said books made the walls of her world feel wider. I couldn't save her, but I could buy one place, keep it from being swallowed." Her lips parted, no words forming. Instead, she leaned closer, not for warmth, but because something in her had shifted. Not dissolved, tilted. A quiet turn toward trust. The city stirred louder below. A siren broke the stillness. Silas pulled his phone from his jacket, eyes narrowing at the screen. He stepped away to answer. Malcolm A. clipped voice, tense and certain, came through the line. "They just moved." "This isn't speculation anymore, Silas. The bait's set, and she's at the center of it." Silas's head lifted. His eyes fixed on Rhea, still seated beneath the lantern glow, unaware that the ground beneath her had already shifted. The cellar door groaned as Silas shoved it open. Stairs plunged into darkness, a chill draft curling upward, heavy with mildew and rust. Rhea followed, ducking beneath the low arch. Stone walls pressed close, damp with moisture that shimmered beneath the weak flicker of a single hanging bulb. "It's like the belly of the city," she murmured. Silas gave a short nod. "Old supply tunnel. Pre-war. Malcolm thinks it still runs under the alley." Every step cracked like a gunshot. The deeper they went, the tighter the air pressed in walls, seeming to breathe around them, carrying secrets that should have stayed buried. Rhea stopped at the third landing. Her beam caught a crude etching on the brick, 3 vertical lines crossed by a slash, a tally scar deep. Her throat tightened. She traced the groove with her finger. "I've seen this before. Vincent used it to mark places he'd handled." The word faltered on her tongue, foreign, bitter. Silas's eyes hardened. "Then he's been here." Her phone buzzed in her pocket screen, casting her face in pale blue. Malcolm's name flashed. She answered. "We're in." "Get out," Malcolm barked. "Now. They know you're with Silas. They're moving faster than we thought. I dragged him into this." "No," Silas cut in firm. "You didn't drag me. I walked in." She looked at him, shirt collar smeared with dirt lines at the corners of his eyes, a man who'd chosen pain and never backed down. They pressed deeper into the tunnel. The floor sloped puddles, warping their reflections. Rats skittered out of reach. At the end, a wall loomed, once a door, now sealed with cement and brick. No exit. Silas pressed his hands against the corners, testing. Nothing gave. Rhea dropped onto a crate. "There's no way out." He crouched beside her, not trapped, just delayed. Metal clanged above, faint at first, then closer. She turned toward the stairwell. A shuffle, a breath. Shadows bent across the light. Silas rose, hand sliding into his coat. "They're here." Her pulse hammered in her ears. She glanced at her phone, no service. Dead. Footsteps crept down the stairs. Boots first, a long coat, then another behind him. No words. Silas motioned her behind a support beam, then stepped forward body-angled to shield her. Calm, controlled. The first man stopped at the last step, head tilted. "Mr. Moreau," he drawled, voice slick. "This isn't your part of town." And yet Silas replied evenly, "Here you are." A gravel laugh. "This tunnel's been silent for years. Shame to wake it just for her." Behind the beam, Rhea clenched her fists. Not again. Not another person cornered because of her. She scanned fast crates, pipes, racks of dusty bottles. Then a glint beneath a tarp caught her eye. A valve. Keeping low, she edged toward it. The men's attention stayed locked on Silas. "Whatever Vincent promised," Silas said, voice like stone, "he won't deliver." "He already has," the man answered, raising a gun. Rhea lunged and yanked the valve. Steam burst from the pipe, hot and screaming. The tunnel filled with haze. Shouts rang out. Silas moved instantly, striking the man's wrist, sending the gun skittering across stone. Another cry. Another shadow stumbling. Rhea snatched the weapon, arms trembling as she aimed. 3 seconds of held breath. Then retreat. Boots pounding up the stairwell, echoes fading like ghosts. Only when silence returned, broken only by the hiss of steam, did Rhea exhale. Silas turned to her, lips split, eyes steady. "Not bad." Her laugh tangled with a sob. Neither spoke as they climbed. Each step dragged heavier than the last. Near the top, she whispered, "What if next time they don't run?" He didn't answer. The night struck them sharp as a blade. A siren wailed in the distance, a lullaby for a city that never really slept. Wind whipped across the dock carrying salt and diesel. Waves slapped the pylons in slow rhythm. Malcolm moved ahead, his shape darting between shadows until he slipped into a gutted shipping office. Its windows were boarded, its corrugated roof sagged like it had surrendered years ago. Rhea lingered at the doorway. Rusted chains swayed from the beams, their metal clinking in the cold. Something in the space clawed at her memory deals, whispered names, traded truths buried in concrete. Silas brushed past her, his hand grazing her lower back, a quiet signal. Not command, not comfort, we moved together. The room breathed with damp, stale secrets. At the far end stood a man in an oversized coat, brim of his cap shadowing his face. He didn't give a name, only slid a small USB drive across a scarred metal desk. "That's part of it," he said flatly. "Rest's locked up. But this, it's what you need." Rhea reached toward it, stopped short. "You'll want privacy when you see what's on it," he added before slipping out the back. The door creaked wide behind him, left yawning. Malcolm produced a laptop from beneath his coat. Data spilled across the screen. Names, wire transfers, encrypted logs. One folder bore a single word, Rosario's. He clicked. A recording unspooled. Vincent's laugh, cruel, smug, filled the room. "She still thinks she's safe behind aprons and bread baskets. Doesn't realize how loud her past screams." Rhea stiffened. Another file opened, a contract, blurred signatures, falsified ledgers, offshore accounts, a charity used as cover. Her breath snagged when a name surfaced in the header. Not Vincent, not his men. Her voice cracked. "Stop. Go back." Malcolm scrolled. The name repeated, Joseph A. Lerner. Silas leaned closer. "You know him." Her hands curled tight. "He was my attorney 4 years ago. Told me if I told the truth, the system would protect me." "And then your testimony vanished," Malcolm muttered. "Because he buried it," she whispered. "Because he made me believe." He looked me in the eye. Silas's tone cut sharp. "Now you see why I don't leave trails, why I don't give anyone the chance to betray me." Wind howled through a gap in the wall metal sheeting, groaning as if the building itself wanted out. Rhea leaned closer to the laptop, clicking open the last file. An invitation appeared, Vincent's name at the top. A gala, charity auction, Saturday night. The crest of an organization she'd once tried to expose stamped across the header. Her breath came thin. "He's planning to vanish after this." Malcolm gave a short nod. "Final play. Tie up loose ends." "You're one of them." She curled her fingers tight around the drive thumb, running the edge. "You don't have to go," Silas said quietly. Her eyes stayed on the fog rolling in from the harbor. "If I don't, someone else ends up like me." Across the water, a freight ship groaned its horn, dragging low through the night. The dock shivered beneath them. She stepped toward the opening voice, little more than a breath. I'm not running anymore. Silas didn't reply. His shadow simply fell alongside hers. Malcolm moved to the doorway. Then we prepare. Rhea slipped the drive into her jacket and started up the gravel path, boots crunching steady with each step. Malcolm watched her fade into the mist. She's in. Silas stayed silent, following not ahead, not behind, but beside. The dock settled into stillness, the waves chewing at its bones. The drawing room of the Moreau estate gleamed with glass walls framing a snow-laced garden branches, iced like fragile bones in moonlight. Heat from the hearth touched Rhea's skin, but never sank deeper. The hush wasn't peace, it was waiting. She stood near the fireplace, arms crossed, gaze fixed on shadows restless against the marble. Flames murmured in the grate. She paid them no mind. Silas entered with steady steps. The crispness of him was gone tonight, tie loosened, sleeves rolled. He didn't speak at once. He poured 2 fingers of whiskey, handed her a glass, then leaned beside her against the mantel. You haven't spoken since the docks. I have nothing easy to say. Her voice came low. The whiskey warmed her lips, not her chest. He inclined his head. You don't have to decide tonight. But she already had. Hours ago. I want to be there, she said, turning toward him. At the gala. I want them to see my face. His brows rose. Rhea, I'm not a waitress anymore, she cut in. Not a runaway. And if I hide, I'll keep running forever. Silas's gaze held hers, the sharpness in it tempered by something quieter. Caution, perhaps. Or regret. Then he gestured. Malcolm appeared almost instantly, tablet in hand. We'll control every variable, Malcolm said, spreading a blueprint of the ballroom across the table. You'll have a transmitter earpiece lapel mic, panic switch sewn into your sleeve, GPS disguised as a pin on your clutch. Rhea traced the map with one finger, stopping at the terrace doors. That's where they'll try to move me. We'll have 2 exits covered, Malcolm assured. The third runs to the garden. If they push, we'll intercept before they get far. She didn't reply. Her eyes swept corridor after corridor, as if memorizing escape routes backward. Silas poured himself another drink. You still have a choice, Rhea. This isn't sacrifice. Her glass touched the table with a quiet click. No, it's reclamation. The clock on the wall ticked louder in the stillness. Later, she wandered the halls. Rugs softened her steps, chandeliers, catching fragments of her reflection in gilt trim and shadow. The Moreau estate was flawless, elegant, cold, more museum than home. Her guest suite waited velvet curtains, a writing desk untouched by ink, a gown hung near the door. Midnight blue, sleek, sleeveless, armor and silk. She rinsed her hands in the bathroom. A shallow cut from the docks stung under the water, a reminder she was still vulnerable, still flesh. Back in the room, the mirror stood waiting. She met her own gaze. The woman staring back hardly felt familiar. Hair smoother, clothes sharper. But that wasn't the shift. It was the steadiness in her eyes. She remembered pleading before a judge who wouldn't look at her. A plastic chair in a precinct hallway waiting for help that never came. The sound of her own voice cracking in an empty apartment. This woman didn't flinch. The door creaked. Silas leaned on the frame tie, gauze sleeves still rolled. He studied her reflection, not her directly. I used to stand there too, he said, before decisions I couldn't take back. My father told me the mirror never lies. She turned slightly. Did it help? Sometimes, but the truth isn't in your face. It's in your spine. You feel it there when you're about to do something you can't undo. Her eyes stayed on his. I'm not looking to undo anything anymore. He stepped in, then paused. Space lingered no longer, guarded, simply waiting. Rhea lowered her gaze to the earpiece Malcolm had left on the dresser. She lifted it, traced the curve with her thumb. Then she looked once more at Silas before turning back to the mirror. No words followed, just reflection, breath, and the quiet decision settling through the room like snow that refused to melt. The scent of sandalwood and jasmine lingered, deliberate and controlled. Marble gleamed beneath heels, clicking like whispers. Rhea entered the Venetian's VIP lounge, her gown trailing like ink in water. Eyes turned toward her, curious, measuring, but none lingered long enough to catch the storm building behind hers. A chandelier blazed overhead, scattering shards of candlelight. From the main hall drifted the low hum of a piano. Waiters slid through the crowd in crisp white shirts, champagne flashing on silver trays. Rhea walked with practiced poise, though her fingers trembled beneath silk gloves. In her ear, the transmitter crackled. "Malcolm," she murmured without moving her lips. Loud and clear came the reply. "You're 2 rooms from the ballroom. Vincent's just arrived. Do you have eyes on him?" She didn't answer. Across the lounge, past a knot of socialites wrapped in satin and diamonds, Vincent stood beneath a gilded mirror. He laughed at some remark from a journalist she recognized, a man who'd once shredded her name on national television. Vincent looked polished, untouchable. Tailored suit, crisp, pockets square. A smile rehearsed to perfection, as if the blood he carried had been powdered away. He hadn't seen her yet. A waiter passed. Rhea reached for a glass but stopped when a woman stepped directly into her path. "Excuse me," Rhea murmured, sidestepping. The woman leaned close, her breath warm against Rhea's ear. "You still go by Rhea, or is it Liana tonight?" The glass tilted in Rhea's hand. She steadied it, throat tightening. The woman's smile was sharp as crystal. "You were quite the story once. Tragic, really. All that idealism wasted." Then she slipped back into the crowd before Rhea could respond. Malcolm's voice snapped in her ear. "Ignore her. She's bait. Stay focused." But Rhea's lungs locked. Liana. No one had spoken that name in years. Not since courtrooms and broken promises. Not since her father sat silent while lawyers tore her credibility apart. Not since she signed away her voice in a beige conference room for a promise of safety she never received. Her pulse hammered. She turned toward a nearby sculpture, feigning admiration, shoulders tightening with the effort. "Breathe," Malcolm prompted. "They want a reaction. Don't give it." Easier said than done. She plucked a canapé from a tray. Her fingers were numb. Someone brushed her shoulder, too deliberate, and muttered, "Guess the past really does catch up." The piano faded. Applause surged. The crowd shifted. And then she saw him. Vincent adjusted his cufflinks, his gaze sweeping the room until it landed squarely on her. He smiled, casual, condescending, and strode toward her with the ease of a man who thought he had already won. Each step thundered beneath her ribs. Her clutch dug into her palm. His cologne reached her before his words, citrus tobacco memory. "Rhea," he said smoothly, loud enough for others to hear. "Didn't expect you here." And radiant as always. She didn't respond. He leaned closer, voice dropping to a blade's edge. "Thought you'd learn to stay quiet." 2 beats passed. Then her lips curved faintly. "Funny," she said evenly. "I was just thinking how much cleaner this room would look without you." The smile on his mouth held, but his jaw ticked. Malcolm's whisper threaded through her ear. "Security's watching. Stay cool." Rhea blinked slowly. "Enjoy the party, Vincent. It may be your last as a free man." His grin faltered. And then beyond his shoulder, one of Silas's men passed through the hallway, giving the prearranged signal. The files had landed. The trap was closing. But Vincent lingered. He stepped in, voice sharp enough to cut. "You think this ends tonight?" Her gaze didn't waver. "I think you've run out of places to hide." The piano struck up again. Applause rose. The room spun back into chatter. Vincent turned and melted into the crowd, but his shadow clung to her. Rhea's hand whitened around her glass. Laughter swelled. Silverware chimed. Yet the walls pressed tighter. The trap was set, she was still the bait. The balcony bit cold against her bare arms, metallic in the night. Below, the city stretched in tangled gold veins. Behind velvet curtains, music dulled into a faint throb. She let the hush steady her. Too many voices had filled her head already. A shuffle. She didn't turn. "Not yet." "I thought you'd show up," she murmured. "You always liked entrances with a view." Vincent's laugh rang light, hollow. "And you still think it's a game?" Footsteps approached. When she finally turned, it wasn't just Vincent. Theo stood at his side. The suit hung awkwardly on his framed shoulders, hunched as if he wanted to fold into himself. Her gaze locked on him. He couldn't meet it. Vincent stepped forward, moonlight painting his features smooth. Hands clasped behind his back, he looked like a man arriving for a toast, not a reckoning. "It's poetic," he said. The girl who tried to burn it all down is standing center stage at a party funded by the men she once exposed. You know what I see? Rhea's voice was steady low. A man who needs backup to taunt someone unarmed. Vincent smirked. Unarmed, you've got half of Moreau's hounds watching you. If I were less charming, they'd already have fired. She held his stare. He nodded at Theo. Tell her. Theo's mouth opened, words snagging on guilt. Vincent cut in. Go on. Tell her you've been the one sending those texts. Tell her how noble it felt to play both sides. Rhea's spine straightened. Theo lifted his eyes at last, glassy jaw tight. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just... His voice cracked. You saved someone once. I thought maybe someone should do the same for you. Vincent clapped slowly, mock applause. Touching. But that's not how this works. He stepped closer, voice sharpening. You're here because I let you be. Because you're useful. A symbol. A warning. Her heart slammed. Theo shifted uneasy. Vincent, quiet. The words snapped like a whip. You had one job, Vincent hissed, glare cutting at him. Watch her. Keep her afraid. And you couldn't even manage that. Theo's fist curled. You said this was cleanup. Not Rhea, cut in voice cold. He said whatever he needed. Theo met her gaze again, something breaking in his eyes. I didn't know they'd go this far. Vincent's hand twitched. The glass doors slid open behind them. A surge of piano spilled out, then dropped. No laughter, no clinking glasses. Only a thick, unnatural pause. Rhea's hand went to the earpiece. Malcolm A. beat of static. Then his voice clipped. They've changed the plan. Her throat dried. Not a grab. Not a scare tactic. They brought hardware. Her body locked. Repeat. Malcolm's tone hardened. They're armed. At least 3. Already in position. Behind her, Vincent chuckled. A private joke. Theo stepped back, alarm flashing in his stance. From the ballroom, a scream split the air. Glass shattered, maybe a champagne tower. Then the roar of panic as chaos ignited like a spark in dry grass. Theo bolted. Vincent stayed, smiling faintly. Let's see how well your new friends play defense. Rhea turned and ran, lungs hammering. She shoved through the balcony doors into a storm of overturned chairs, fleeing guests in the jagged sound of panic. But beneath it all, she recognized the rhythm. This wasn't chaos, it was choreography. The service hall stretched ahead, washed in the pulse of green emergency lights. Her footsteps beat sharp, Vincent's and Theo's heavier behind. Rhea didn't look back. She turned the corner, slowed just enough to let them stay close. An overhead vent buzzed, masking the faint clicks in her ear. We shouldn't be here, Theo whispered, doubt lacing his voice. You followed her this far? Vincent said, his tone slicing through the corridor like glass. We finish it. Rhea's hand brushed the steel handle of a side door, breath clouding faintly in the stale corridor. She turned. Vincent watched her the way a lion studies prey already claimed. Where do you think this ends? Her answer came soft, where it should have ended 4 years ago. Theo flinched. Silas's voice crackled calm through her earpiece. On my signal. Rhea inhaled, then stepped back, luring both men further down the hall. Shadows bent and stretched under the flicker of overhead lights. The quiet settled heavy as snowfall. She slipped a phone from her coat pocket, the one Vincent had once crushed under his heel. Only this wasn't a phone anymore. It was a transmitter shell. She held it up. Tell me, Vincent, she said, voice unsteady but caring, do you remember the Steinburn project? He froze. You called it a cleanup contract. I called it 10 ruined families and 1 girl who got away. His smile thinned. You think you're in control. She tapped the screen once. I know I am. Magnetic locks snapped shut, both ends sealed. From the vents above, sensors hissed to life. Boots thundered from the north. Silas's men advanced steady and disciplined. Jules appeared at the rear, gave her a nod. You did well. Vincent lunged, but Silas stepped from the opposite side, voice sharp as steel. Don't. Rhea didn't move. You talk too much, Vincent spat, breath ragged. Her chin lifted. And you never listened. A guard seized his wrist. He jerked away until another hand clamped his shoulder. Malcolm, his face unreadable. I warned you, Malcolm murmured. Vincent barked a bitter laugh. You think they'll believe this? I'll walk. They'll believe the voice print Rhea shot back. The timestamp. The USB. Theo pressed against the wall, torn. Fear flickered in his eyes, not only of Vincent, but of the weight of his own choices. "I never wanted anyone hurt," he whispered. "You wanted me erased," she replied, voice flat. Truth, not anger. He didn't deny it. Vincent cursed as the cuffs cinched. One guard muttered in Italian. Vincent spat on the floor in answer. The hallway thinned as the team withdrew. Rhea stood still, hands trembling, adrenaline bleeding out like ink into water. The hush afterward roared louder than any fight. Silas moved beside her, silent, then pressed a folded handkerchief into her palm. She didn't wipe her face, just held it. "They always think they're too important to fall," she said. His gaze softened. "You didn't fall." "No." Her voice was low, brittle. "But I broke." He stayed quiet. Some cracks weren't for fixing, only naming. Theo lingered, waiting for some verdict. Rhea turned. "You know where to go." A nod. "Then go." When the doors unsealed, a gust rolled in from the lobby. Not clean, but clearer. She didn't thank Silas. He didn't ask. Some victories needed no applause, just breath and the strength to walk forward. Rhea did. The conference room stank faintly of chlorine and glue. White lights buzzed overhead, bleaching shadows into nothing. Curtains shut tight against the city. No music here, only breath and the weight of what had passed. Vincent slouched at the far end of the glass table, wrists bound behind the chair. One eye swollen, collar, askew, fury simmering with nowhere to land. Malcolm stood at the door, arms crossed, phone, buzzing with messages he ignored. Silas entered behind him, steps measured, authority carried without effort. Rhea followed. Her tread was quiet but steady. Her eyes locked with Vincent's and didn't waver. He smiled, crooked and bitter. "You've changed." She didn't respond, just pulled out the chair across from him and sat. "You used to cry when people raised their voices," he continued. "Used to beg for people to believe you." Still nothing from her. Vincent's voice lost some of its edge. "I never thought you'd be the one left standing." Malcolm stepped forward. "This isn't a conversation. You're not owed a damn word." But Rhea lifted a hand, stopping him. Not for Vincent, just for herself. Her voice, when it came, was steady. "You built everything on fear. You counted on people staying quiet. On me staying broken." Vincent chuckled, lips splitting at the corner. "You think this matters? A few recordings. Some USB, these people, they eat each other before breakfast." Rhea leaned in just slightly. "That's why I'm not giving it to them. I'm giving it to their children." He blinked, just once. But it was enough. Behind them, the door opened. Theo entered with one of Silas's men at his side. He looked younger now, the borrowed confidence stripped away. He walked straight to Silas, stood there without speaking for a long moment. Then, barely audible, "I'm out. I don't want any part of this anymore. I want to go home." Silas regarded him steadily. "You can't erase what you've done." "I know," Theo admitted. "But I can stop." Malcolm crossed to the credenza, retrieved a tablet and tapped it awake. "We'll process the exit. You'll be monitored. Speak to the wrong person again, and we finish what they started." Theo nodded, though his hands wouldn't stay still. Vincent exhaled through his nose, sharp with contempt. "Cowards. Every last one of you." Silas stepped closer, no anger in his tone, just finality. "You always thought power was about who shouted loudest. You never cared who was listening." Vincent had no answer for that. Silas turned to Rhea, his voice softening. "It's over." She glanced at her hands. They weren't trembling anymore. Cuts from the broken glass had begun to crust over. Her palms carried traces of ink wire residue, the faint thrum of her own pulse, but steady all the same. "I should feel something," she murmured. "I thought I'd feel something." "You will," Silas said simply. He didn't push. Malcolm gave a short nod. The guards moved Vincent toward the door, his shoes scuffing against the sterile carpet. He didn't resist. He didn't plead. He walked like a man who finally understood the silence waiting at the end of power. Theo trailed after, gaze fixed on the floor. When the door shut, the room felt emptier, though not lighter. Not yet. Silas stayed near the window. A faint draft stirred the curtain, parting it enough to reveal the glitter of the city skyline beyond. "They've started the music again," he said quietly. Rhea tilted her head, listening. A faint rise of orchestral strings drifted up from the ballroom celebration, or something that passed for it. Glasses clinked. Laughter rippled. Life carried on. But the conference table still bore the dent of Vincent's elbow. Rhea rose without a word. No speech, no announcement. Just a quiet motion as she gathered the few things left behind a folder, a pen, the name tag still pinned to the lining of her jacket. "Are you ready to leave?" Silas asked. Her gaze stayed on the folder's edge. Fingers brushed its corner before she answered. "No." He waited. "But I'm ready to walk." No smile from him, only the sound of the door opening. She paused under the fluorescent light, drew one measured breath, and stepped forward. The scent of old paper drifted through the library, mingling with the clean slice of morning sunlight stretched across worn floorboards. Dust swirled in the glow like memories briefly caught in amber. The Brooklyn Public Library stood unchanged, high ceilings, humming bulbs above the front desk. What had shifted was the stillness within her. Her steps carried her to the hidden reading nook, behind the biographies half concealed unless you knew where to look. The bench cushion sagged its threads, curling outward like roots seeking ground. She lowered herself slowly and opened the manila envelope resting in her lap. The documents smelled faintly of ink and time. A partial release, fragments of sealed case files finally loosened. Yellowed corners. Names typed in black she hadn't seen in years. Page after page turned beneath her hands. Vincent Harrow, Lillian Graves, Martin Epps. Her own name bold across a witness statement stamped 7:46 p.m. Her breath caught. That version of herself, 26, trembling, in a gray blouse, voice quivering above a whisper, stared back from the transcript. She remembered the sterile room, the buzz of lights, sweat pooling under her knees. She'd believed words would be enough, that truth would fix things. Her thumb traced the faded line of handwriting. "I was present on the evening of," no tremor in the paper, though she recalled the hitch in her lungs. "I saw Mr. Harrow enter the building," at ink faltered midline, "and I believe the transfer was made through sentence, unfinished, pen dropped. Excuse me." A boy's voice, 9, maybe 10. He stood nearby in a red jacket, too big for his frame, clutching a battered graphic novel. His eyes held no fear, only curiosity. "Are you the woman from the news?" She blinked. "The one who stopped the bad guys?" he pressed. A small smile curved her mouth. She used to be scared of telling the truth. He tilted his head, waiting. But not anymore. Approval lit his grin. "Cool," he said, and hurried off toward the comic shelves. Her chest loosened, not emptied, but rearranged. The weight shifted to where it could be carried. The files slid back into the envelope, tucked into her bag. Rising, she felt her posture hold straighter. Rows of books whispered as she passed. Somewhere between fiction and nonfiction, she found herself again. At the exit, the librarian met her with a knowing smile. Rhea returned it without hesitation. Beyond the steps, the city stretched awake. Sunlight struck her profile, jaw, a knotted pace, unhurried. Bus doors folded, heels tapped, concrete bicycle bells chimed across the square. One voice cut through, calling her real name. Not in threat, not in accusation. Simply called like it belonged to her. She didn't flinch. Her gaze lifted to the skyline, to the open blue carved between buildings. No cloak of caution, no bent shoulders. And so she didn't bend. Fluorescent lights buzzed through the hall of Brooklyn City Hall, sharp and steady, as if echoing something long delayed. Cameras clicked in half-second rhythms. Cords tangled under reporters' shoes. Rows of wooden chairs leaned forward, not out of habit, but hunger. Rhea entered through the brass door sleeve of her jacket, smoothed in a single motion. The handle had been cold against her palm, yet her grip never wavered. Her eyes swept the room. A cluster of local activists took up the front row, clipboards on their knees. Behind them, city clerks and precinct officers, and dotted throughout faces from her neighborhood, from the park, from Rosario's. Some avoided her gaze, some didn't. At the far end, Malcolm approached the podium, adjusting his collar with a practiced gesture. The hush that followed wasn't commanded, it simply arrived. He began with the basics. The corporation, under scrutiny, had built luxury condos while laundering million shell companies' falsified permits and city contracts stacked with just enough paperwork to appear legitimate. Malcolm traced the web as it spread through zoning boards and regulators. At its center, Harrow Ventures veiled behind a tangle of subsidiaries. He clicked the remote. A signature filled the projector screen. Not Vincent's, someone higher, someone who had stayed invisible. Gasps stirred across the room as the name appeared: Harold Whitmore, former city attorney, the man who had once taken Rhea's original statement, then quietly buried it. Her gaze held steady. Her name hadn't been spoken, but it hovered. Malcolm's tone didn't rise. He didn't need to. 4 years ago, a report was submitted to my predecessor's office by a private witness. That file was suppressed. Today, we correct that failure. Rhea rose at the sound of her name, moving forward with a folded slip of paper in hand. No podium, just her voice carrying across the wooden floor. It's strange, she began, how something small can outlast everything meant to crush it. No pity in her eyes, no reach for applause. I'm not here to relive what went wrong. Enough of that has been said. I just want to remind you, don't ignore the person who notices the details. The number that doesn't match, the door that won't lock, the man who smiles too much. A pause. The silence weighted itself into the room. Sometimes those people save lives. Her gaze found the back row. Silas sat alone, one leg crossed, neatly hands, folded eyes never leaving her. No eruption followed, no ovation, just something quieter, stronger. A collective breath held, then released, belief settling into place. Afterward, voices swirled, reporters angling for quotes, lawyers murmuring next steps. Rhea moved through them like water around stone, untouched, unhurried. On the steps, slick with morning mist, she noticed someone waiting. Elena. Two steaming cups in hand, cardboard sleeves warming her fingers, a loose strand of hair tugged by the wind. She lifted one cup. Double shot. I know how you get after speeches. A laugh slipped from Rhea's throat, surprising even her. She took the cup, heat grounding her more than applause ever could. We've got inventory tomorrow, Elena said, and your shift starts at 5. Rhea nodded and sipped. The coffee was stronger than usual. She didn't mind. For a while they stood together without words, two women who had survived in different ways, now facing forward on the same path. Not an end, just a clearing. Down the block, someone whistled for a cab. The city carried on, but something in its rhythm had shifted. Rhea felt it, not as thunder, not as applause, but as space in her lungs that hadn't been there before. The bell above the door chimed as the first customers stepped in with the morning breeze. Warm light spilled across the polished floor of Rosario's gentler, now softened by change. The walls had been painted a calm ivory lined with candid photographs, a couple holding hands over coffee, a grandmother feeding her grandson soup. Malcolm caught mid-laugh with a fork in hand. Behind the counter, Rhea wiped the surface clean, flipping her order pad open with a practiced flick. A faint flour smudge streaked her apron from the prep shift. She left it there. It felt like part of the day. This place no longer felt like somewhere she hid. A boy no older than 10 walked up to the counter with a small bundle of daisies clutched in his hand. His cheeks were red, wind-bitten. "These are for you," he said. "My aunt said you helped save that man on TV." She crouched slightly to meet his eyes, the one with the long coat and serious face. The boy nodded, grinning. She accepted the flowers gently. "He saved me too, so we're even." He ran back to his table, already calling for pancakes. Behind her, the espresso machine hissed. She placed the daisies in a water glass by the cash register next to a faded photo of Elena when she first opened Rosario's, hair darker, smile the same. Rhea glanced at the clock, then back at the front door just as it swung open again. Silas stepped in without fanfare. No tailored suit today, just a charcoal coat scarf, tucked neatly, gloves folded in his hand. He walked like the street belonged to someone else, but he was just borrowing it for a while. Rhea didn't move right away. He didn't rush either. "You still take it black?" she asked. With a touch of cinnamon, he replied. She slid the cup across the counter without another word. It was already steeping exactly how he liked it. He picked it up, nodded a quiet thanks, and scanned the room. The table in the far corner, the one where he used to sit alone watching everything, remained empty. He didn't go there. Instead, he chose the table near the front window, where light stretched long and golden across the floorboards. A new table. A new view. There were 2 chairs. He didn't say anything. Just placed his gloves on the table and took a sip. Rhea finished jotting an order for table 3. She handed it off to the kitchen, then wiped her hands and walked toward him. Not hesitant, Just thoughtful. She set a folded receipt on the table. He raised an eyebrow. That's for the coffee, she said. You're charging me now, fair's fair. He smiled just slightly, not the smirk he wore when he was guarded. Something gentler. Something that didn't need armor. Rhea didn't sit, but she stood there a moment longer than necessary, close enough for their fingers to brush as she passed him the pen. His hand lingered. So did hers. No kiss, no declarations. But in the stillness in the space between silence and breath, something passed between them. A recognition, a promise. Rhea eventually stepped away. The kitchen buzzed again. Elena's voice floated through, joking with the prep staff. The scent of rosemary bread baking curled through the air. Behind her, Silas remained at the window, table eyes on the street, coffee warming his hands. He didn't need to look at her to know she was still there. She didn't need to check to be sure. They had moved past needing confirmation. The cafe filled slowly with noise. Cutlery clinked, chairs scraped gently against wood, laughter rose in short bursts. The world hadn't stopped because they'd survived. That was the point. As Rhea walked toward the kitchen, a ray of sunlight stretched across her path, catching the edge of the daisies in the glass. She paused just long enough to adjust the stems, then stepped through the swinging door. Behind her, Rosario's kept humming, life unfinished, exactly as it should be. Sometimes healing doesn't look like standing on a podium or walking away with applause. It looks like tying your apron again, answering by your real name, holding a cup steady with the same hands that once trembled in silence. This was never just a story about crime and justice. It was about the quiet kind of courage, the kind that shows up when no one's watching, the kind that stays. If you carry anything from Rhea's story, let it be this: what once broke you doesn't get to define you. Now go gently into your day, into your kitchen, into your own version of rebuilding. The door's open, the coffee's warm. Start where you are.